episodio más de Parálisis Cerebral Respuestas. Ya estoy nerviosa. Welcome to another episode of Cerebral Palsy Answers. I am so excited about this episode. I can barely contain myself. É um prazer entrevistá-la, Emilia. Obrigado. So that's my Portuguese because my guest today is originally from Brazil. And so Emilia Ferreira, thank you so much for saying yes to this interview. And I'm so glad that it's finally happening.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so happy. You have no idea how grateful I feel that we finally were able to connect.
Yes.
This is such a big deal because, I guess you're going to say, but I do have a daughter with CP, and just to meet you, which is the future, it's really inspiring for me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Emilia. And we were saying off the air how we could probably do this interview in three languages, Spanish and Portuguese and English, but we're going to focus on English this time. So this episode will be in English. But as she mentioned already, Emilia is a neuroscientist, is a mother to a daughter with CP, but she's also an author, a filmmaker. So I feel like our paths intersect so much, Emilia. So there's so much I would love to ask you, but we're going to focus on your studies as a neuroscientist and also being the mother of Ona, who has CP. And I'm just going to start right off, like, take me back to that moment where you received the news that Ona was diagnosed with CP. How did you feel that day? I don't know if you have a partner or not, but if so, how did that impact the family unit? How was receiving the news that Ona had cerebral palsy in that moment for you?
Okay. Believe it or not, it was a relief because I was living with the unknown for a very long time when Ona was born. She was born with 28 weeks. My cervix opened with 24, and I was able to hold her for a few extra days. And I caught a hospital infection, so we had to induce her into birth. And so when she was born, she was taken right away from me. And so I would say that that was the moment that was more intense than when I received the news that she had cerebral palsy. Because it took a year and a half for us to finally understand what was going on with her. Before that, we went to so many doctors just because she was premature. And everything that I kept hearing from all the doctors was, your daughter is just premature. She will catch up. She will catch up. And so we were living in New York City at that time, commuting from Costa Rica to New York City. And I did all doctors in New York and all doctors in Costa Rica. And they all say the same. Let's do physical therapy because that's what she needs to catch up. Was when I went to Mexico, that's where I live today, that we found out for pure casualty. Well, at this point, you're going to know that I really don't believe in casualty anymore. My husband and I have a partner. My husband and I, we went out for dinner and we left Ona with a nurse, with a neonatal nurse in Mexico. And her name is Pau, and we love her. So, hi, Pau. She's going to watch.
Hola, Pau.
And we were talking about Ona being premature. She's like, hey, I know this person, the Ona's leg is very stiff. And we're like, yeah, everybody tell us that, but they just say that she's going to catch up. She's going to catch up. And so she's like, well, go see this person. So we went to see this doctor in Mexico. He's like, well, we got to do an MRI. And I'm like, what? An MRI? A year and a half later. That's how much I did not know about this. And so he's like, let's do it right away. So we took a picture of her brain, and there you go. She doesn't have the motor cortex. And we were like, oh my gosh. And that actually was my first neuroscience class, because he sat me down and we did a 3 hours consultation in which he explained to me everything that was happening with her. And I'm like, oof. There was this sense of weight and lack of weight in which you stand in between all. And that's when everything for me started. It was a place of, that was the beginning for me. So, I took as, yeah, it was kind of scary. Yes, it was kind of uncomfortable to hear that, because I never heard it before. But yet, at the same time, was a place of like, I'm going to land in a place and I don't know what this place is. And I'm excited, you know?
Wow, that's so very different from, well, I guess for each person and each parent, it's a different reaction, right? And one of the things that I've realized talking to so many parents and so many well, yeah, mainly parents, because I get emails from parents, is that some of them say, when you receive the diagnosis that your child, or that my child, I should say, received has cerebral palsy, there's this like negative connotation with it, and there's like this chemical reaction in my head that the worst things are going to happen. Now I'm going to tap into your expertise as a neuroscientist, because as I said, you are a neuroscientist, and you provide help, or I shouldn't say help, but you guide other parents and individuals as a coach as well. How were you studying to be a neuroscientist at the same time as you received the diagnosis? And how did those two things intertwine?
So let me just go back to your first question for just 1 second, because the moment that I received the message, it was that sense of relief. However, I went home, and home was when, in between the four walls, I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this? Like, I know nothing about this. So I did had distress. I did had concerns. I did ask God for help. I call all my friends to ask for support. And so that was that. Okay. Because I think it was a roller coaster, but I was aware of my suffering too. I was not, the suffering was appreciated. I was not afraid to feel that lack of power, or that lack of knowing what was going to happen to my daughter and to myself, because deep down, I always knew it, that it's okay. That experience, it's okay. It's just going to be a different experience, but it's okay.
Okay.
And now jumping to your second question, it's interesting because before Ona was born, around 7 years earlier, or maybe 5, I was working a script. And the script is called The Perfect Memory, in which was about the brain, was about this person taking a pill, which now exists, of course, to disassociate traumatic events, traumatic physical events, to the emotional attachment that the event has. Meaning, if you're in a car crash, you take the pill. You're going to remember that you were in a car crash, but you're not going to remember how you felt like.
Orderly. Okay.
Right? So,
Wow.
because the feeling is what makes us distress. The memory of the things that happen to us doesn't really carry an emotional impact, but you can tone that down or you can increase that up.
Right.
So a lot in the hospitals today, when people are coming from, major car accidents, they are asked, do you want to take this? So your memory of that is not going to cause the severe PTSD that is a big problem we have right now, right, in society. And so I learned so much about the brain then.
Mm-hmm.
He had to get letters from NYU Medical Hospital, the psychiatry center, and everybody was like, okay, this movie needs to be done. For many reasons, the movie did not
Uh-huh.
got to be produced. And a year later, that happened to me with Anna. And so as that moment happened, I always, as a film director, as a storyteller,
Uh-huh.
and knowing how much stories move the chemistry of the brain too,
Mm-hmm.
it was just a step further. That at first moment, I thought that because I was a woman, because I carry all those stereotypes and stigmas, I could not do it. But when Anna was born, I
Mm-hmm.
knew it. This is the direction I need to go now.
Yeah.
It's almost like continue to say yes to the calling that I had been getting. And so the first year and a half
Uh-huh.
of Anna,
Uh-huh.
I tried everything that you can possibly imagine to try to heal my daughter.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Therapists, many methods, everything that you can imagine. And I realized that I was not seeing her for who she was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand her brain. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand my brain and how we were interacting as in that experience.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided that was time to go knock on the door of science so I could truly understand her brain and I how my brain was interacting in this relationship, in this experience we were creating together with Anna.
That's amazing. And actually, as you were saying that, I remembered, and as I told you off the air, I read a lot of what you've written in your website. And one of the things I'm going to read a little bit about what you wrote. And this is in your story. You write, my story. And there's a part where you say, actually, I have it on my phone, so I'm just going to read it. As I hold her close today, I glimpse the universe reflected in her eyes, a testament that even amid the depths of struggle, the most beautiful narratives emerge, adorned with pearls of shared tears and the triumphant rhythm of courage. Yet my journey wasn't just a solitary quest, it was intertwined seamlessly with my studies in neuroscience. As I delve into the influence of words in our very psychology, I uncovered the intricate dance of stress hormones and neurotransmitters triggered by the negative connotations we attach to language. Amazing, beautiful. I am your fan, and I know you've written a book, so please send me a copy.
I have a call Friday with a potential publisher, so I'm super excited about that too.
That's Thank you. Thank you so much for writing that. And I was going to ask you precisely that because I also, as a communicator, I study words and I know the power of words and the language we use. And something that you mentioned there is precisely that the negative connotations that the word cerebral palsy carries, and one of the things you mention is that cerebral palsy merely describes what Ona has and I have, but it doesn't show who we are as people. So how has your language and the way you communicate changed since the birth of Ona, or maybe even before? And how can how can we as a society, as other parents that are listening to you, how can they change their language to not attach those negative connotations, right? There's another quote that I wrote from you that I'll share later, but it's just, you express yourself in such a beautiful way that I wish that when parents would get the diagnosis that their children has cerebral palsy, or any diagnosis, it wasn't, it shouldn't be this negative, like, oh, this burden. So how has your language changed, and what would you recommend to other parents listening to you?
That is an amazing question. Thank you for bringing that up, because I believe that what you say and we are going to talk about now is the root of the problem. It's really the reason why we still live in a society that is fragmented, because stories. Language is nothing more than stories constructed to create meaning to something.
Mm-hmm.
And so we live off those stories that have been told in the past. Okay. So in the past, before the Renaissance times, a child with differences, a child with CP, or you name it, were considered goddesses and gods. Okay. Women were considered magic. The midwives were considered doctors. And then comes this turn, this historical turn around the Renaissance times, when mathematics and men became more rational, where we start using the right side of our brain. There's a beautiful book, if you want to hear it, called The Alphabet, The Goddesses Between the Alphabet, which they go through story and say how they change the chemistry of your brain through the stories we lived. Anyway, long story short, something changed. Something profoundly changed at that moment. Somebody just started telling a different story. Next thing you know, children with CP were known as mistake from God, or something that the parents did wrong, and now they're being accused. Now they're being exposed through their child condition of punishment. So society start punishing them. Okay. Midwife women, they start to be witches and start being burned. Do you see?
That's
From
rich.
being goddesses to, next thing you know, being punishment, right? And so history continued to be telling the same story. It's not a few years ago that you would hear a story of parents hiding their children inside their house with CP, inside their house, because they're afraid to show them to society, because they are being punished. They will be punished. That story has not changed. Okay. Now, what happens to your brain when you have this preconditioning of stereotypes and stigmas? Okay. You start to, before anything happens, your body start already responding to the signals the environment is giving to you. Right? So back to what you just read, the stress hormone lights up and say, oh my gosh, I'm about to expose my child. I know what this means. I know they're going to be judged because story has told me that. And that story, trust me, is passed to us genetically. And you can hear so many research with different types of cultures, for example, the Holocaust, that it took many generations for the people there be now of parents or grandparents that have died on the Holocaust with severe depression or severe anxiety disorders, just because they are genetically carrying that code. That happens to us parents the moment we know, the moment that happened to us, that something profound that happened with our chemistry, that we start perceiving the environment that holds that, which it is.
Right.
Right? So the way we can change that is to change the agency we carry over the stories we tell.
The agency we carry over the stories we tell. So changing our vocabulary and the way we associate
Just
words.
change the story,
Okay.
because those are based on stereotype and stigmas. So usually when I work with a parent, I'm like, all right, so let's go through the stereotype and stigmas and let's see how your body is responding to that. Because a lot of times we don't know how the body reacts to the environment. We are only on flight or fight mode, just stress. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is stressful. I don't even know why, right? Because your system knows that there is story you have been living, which are, by the way, your brain is formed via stereotypes and stigmas because they need to code the environment to move faster to everything you see it. Meaning, I can't not see a person with CP and have a lot of time to think what that represents to me. Based on my previous experience, I'm going to say CP, people with CP means this,
Right.
period. That's what we need to change, the period.
Right. Okay.
Parents also need to do that work because it's them, the
Right.
only ones that truly can change the story
Right.
of how how people with CP are perceived and how parents of children with CP are perceived.
Right.
Which, by the way, is not easy, but it's not hard.
Okay. So, give me an example of how you would do it. So, like for example, um, I have people that listen to me all over the world, Bolivia, New Zealand, Italy. And some of these countries are low income countries and they do not have access to a lot of resources and even have the privilege of speaking to someone like you. So how would a parent who has a child with CP or any disability for that matter, because there's a negative connotation to having a disability, right? How would you say, okay, this is how you can start to change the story so that in future generations, perhaps you don't have to carry that, I don't know, guilt, shame, resentment, what
I
can
would
they do? What are some like practical tips that you
okay.
would recommend?
I would say first, I would ask them to feel the shame of it and experience in their body so they know what it feels like. Okay, because it's true. It's not true that they are feeling that way. So first, let's start learning how the body experiences this, and let's accept it. Let's not suppress, right? So I usually, to myself, by the way, this is constant work because we still live on the prior story. But I'll tell you something that's magical that happens when you start understanding how your body reacts to, when I say the environment, I'm saying the stories that is being to you, right? Because we construct our future with past information.
Wow, that's
And
powerful.
we can only change the future, or we can only change the present with the past, correct?
Yeah.
But we build the present with this moment right now, which makes the future. So this moment right now, we need to start understanding how our body feels.
Okay.
It's the only way, because if you're taking information from the past, then your future is going to be, so your present is going to be related to that sensation.
Okay.
But if I am stopping right now and I say, okay, let me feel the guilt. Let me see how that feels. And let me breathe in it. Okay. When somebody look to a child in a grocery store with that eye, stay with it. Do not look at your child. It's about you. It's not about them. It's about you. feel it. When somebody tells you, hey, sorry, I thought that I couldn't invite you to this event because there was no place for your daughter to be at. Stay. What that feels like. Okay. So that's what you feel. It's a chemical reaction that is based on stereotyping and stigma. That person that did that does not know different. So the whole idea of, being angry with the world is not going to help because it's not true. What is true is how you experience this, and the only one that can change the experience of how you feel is you. That's number one. And I have an exercise, if you want, I can send it to you with questions. I say, I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to say a few things, which is go on, if somebody is looking at your child with that. When you're sitting with the doctor and they tell you something that you know that's not true about your child, how that feels.
Okay.
Because it's not going to feel like a emotion first. It's going to be like a feeling first. Your mouth is going to get dry. Your heart is going to stop pumping. Your stomach is going to tight. Those are the cues that I want people to start acknowledging. Because before we get emotional, there's a lot of things that happen. So if we can control what happens before that emotional discharge, there is so much power that you can create with your experience. Because you're going to be like, hey, heart, let me slow you down. Because this is not true.
Okay.
This or somebody told me. And then you know what happened next? You just feel this compassion towards yourself, which is the increase of oxytocin in your system. You were able to understand how stress was going to discharge that emotional roller coaster. And instead of let that go, you increase your oxytocin, you increase other balance in your system that now makes you rest.
Okay.
There's not a bear that's going to eat me anymore. My amygdala, it's calm. My mind is going, my default mode network is telling me, oh shit, don't do that. We have been here before. No, you have not been there before because that's new and you're going to create something new out of it. That you start increase blood circulation in your brain, which makes you think, which makes you use your frontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that dictates the 5 minutes into the future. Before we create this piece, you had, or whatever, right? This lipstick, you had to imagine that. But you cannot imagine things out of stress, right? Number one. Number two, once that happens, you need to open your heart. You need to tell the truth about how you feel this experience. I talk to a lot of other mothers and tell them how I felt. Today, I told you I had this thing at school, I had to go. I sat with some mothers and I say, hey, can you ask your child how they are connecting with Ona? Because Ona has been bullied before because of the way she walks. So, and that really breaks my heart and makes me cry. And they say, oh my gosh, no, this is not true. Like, this is not happening. Don't worry. And I say, I understand that you feel that way, but imagine if this was you. It's hard. Can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me with your child to make sure that my child is not going to feel like that all her friends are there just to help her? She doesn't need help like that, right? Because, with my daughter, usually happens that they don't want to be friends with her because they know if they are friends with her, what it means they need to help her, right? So the mothers don't know that. The children don't know that. The teachers don't know that. Only you know because you know by experience that this is what it is. You can change that experience for everybody by opening your heart and saying the truth of how you feel and how you want help.
Okay.
That is agency.
Okay.
is a state in which you use words or action to make other people react towards what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even though what you want is help.
Yeah.
Because people think of agencies like, oh, let's go get it. No, please help me.
Mm.
Please help my situation.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, they start open up, and then there's this wave of tension that drops, because by doing that, you also increase oxytocin in the person you're speaking to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's this doctor, his name is Paul Zach. He's actually my teacher at Neuroscience school.
Uh-huh.
And he has this beautiful uh, book. I think it's called Immersion. I don't remember exactly.
Uh-huh.
But look at him up. He's amazing. He has this strategy. He's saying the way to be consistently feeling good, you need to give 8 hugs per day.
I agree. I love hugs.
Because
I've read that.
because increase the oxytocin on you and in your person you're talking to, which therefore is going to continue this chain. Note it only lasts for around 16 hours or so. That's why you need to be consistent.
Hugging everyone.
And so and the third thing I would say is hug your child skin to skin. Skin to skin. I don't know if you notice, but everything that I'm saying, it's more related, even though there's this big expression in the world, it's truly related to your inside out.
Mm-hmm.
I find very difficult to give a device to people and say, don't mind the environment. It's hostile. It's true.
Yeah.
Do mind it. And do know you're not going to be able to change that or your experience of that if it's not from the inside out. If it's not through your hormones, if it's not through your brain balance.
Mm-hmm. So the first one is be present in what you feel every time your child, for example, is stared at and looked at, right?
But before emotion.
Before emotion.
Meaning, did your mouth got dry? Did you get like a little bit shakier? Did your heart start pumping? Did you get this weird sensation? So let's change feeling for sensation, for body sensation.
Okay.
Be aware of your body sensation.
Okay.
Did you blush?
Okay.
That happens a lot. One way that I experienced that is that I start blushing.
Okay.
So I'm like blushing. And I know my body is going to release stress. And I know that that's going to cause me inflammation. I know that that's going to cause me to read this as something that's not true, because that other person doesn't really know. So I cannot judge them. They don't. I can only take that moment and say what I'm going to do with this. Because I know after this, I'm going to start feeling stuff. And then after the feeling, I'm going to start ruminating. Do you know what rumination is?
Yes. Constantly thinking.
So, monkey mind. And then, my friend, that's it. There's no way back. You need to just let it go, let it pass, right? Or you do breathing. But I think it's much easier for you to, number one, start learning body sensations.
Okay.
One thing I learned in neuro school, you're not only your brain.
Oui.
Your body tells, by the way, your heart sends way more information to your brain that the brain sends to the heart.
Wow.
That's why I say now you open your heart after all of that happens. So in science, it's not my opinion.
Sí. Wow. And by the way, I just want to make a little parenthesis. Thank you so much. One of the greatest satisfactions that I have with this podcast, and I've said it before, but I think definitely I need to say it again, is that I feel a profound sense of gratitude towards the people that are sharing their stories with me. And in this case, you sharing that, for example, Ona, gets bullied at school and that she doesn't have that many friends, and that when she does have friends, they associate being her friend with having to help her. That is exactly my story as well. And also the sense that having a child, and this goes back to your previous point, having a child with a disability, be it CP or any disability, is a punishment from God. I also lived that firsthand from family. So that means a lot to me, that you shared that, and I wanted for you to know that I as well, and we've talked before, but I also experienced that as a child, and I didn't have obviously many friends. One of the things that you just mentioned is the environment, right? And this is one of the things that you actually also studied and you're very involved with, is, I believe the term is epigenetics, how the environment can shape a child's future and genes actually as well. Can you talk about a little bit more about epigenetics and the role that parents and family members and we as a society can have by fostering a loving environment and good memories, especially for those younger children, like when their brains are, when there's more neuroplasticity, if I may say. um, can you speak more about epigenetics?
Mhm. The brain goes through this process of called pruning, right? Which you have this capacity around the age of 7 years old. But I actually a believer that you can stimulate neurogenesis at any age if you are strategic. Okay. And then that takes us to epigenetics. Um, let's say that you have two cells. They are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you take one cell and you put one cell into a bucket with light and salt and that. And then you take the other cell that's exactly the same,
Mm-hmm.
and you put her in water and sugar. One environment has salt, another environment has sugar.
Mm-hmm.
The cell that was with salt, this is
Mm-hmm.
hypothetical, okay? It's not true. I store it. The one that is on the salt was born bone. The environment of the salt stimulates the protein of that cell, of that DNA, to produce bone.
Mm-hmm.
The cell that was in sugar produced muscle, right? They were exactly the same, but the environment made them function accordingly to how they were stimulated.
Okay.
Now, there are genetics for depression, there are genetics for anxiety, there's everything. And the environment is going to turn on or turn off that expression.
Okay.
This way, let me take a page here. This is a cell, right? And the environment is this. The environment is sending information. The environment is sending, you're gonna feel stressed. Then the DNA open and the protein say, I'm going to feel stressed. And then she responded to that environment. But I'm going to be calm and gentle and lovely. And then what happened? The DNA open, the protein say, I'm going to gentle this and that. So the environment stimulate how your DNA is going to interact with your environment. What that means to us, if we are in an environment that is stressful, that is hostile, we are going to be that.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to be stressed. We are going to have anxiety because the environment is asking that from us. And in order for us to survive, we interact.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we are in an environment that is calmer, that is less hostile, you are going to interact with that too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to become less. For people with CP and for parents that raise children
Mm-hmm.
or big people like you,
Uh-huh.
because I always think that we're always children,
Yes.
environment is 50% or more of how you act on that sensation of experience, on how you experience the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Environment is what is creating you to feel the way you feel.
Okay.
You felt lonely, you felt you didn't have friends, you felt all of this because the environment told you that that's how you're going to feel.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could have done,
Right.
right? But now, us parents, we can change the environment. And we can change also how our children experience the environment.
Right.
So, Anna, now she's fine, but this is the previous school and she was had the problem with the bullying. I
Mm-hmm.
sat with her and I say, Anna, I'm going to teach you a social skill.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to change. You're not
Uh-huh.
going to change. But I'm
Right.
going to teach you a social skill on how to make friends.
All right.
Instead of you saying, hey, can we play together? You are going to say, hey, let's play together this game.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they say no, it's not about you, it's about the game. So your body is not going to react with stress and saying that you're being rejected because they didn't reject you, they reject the game.
Okay.
So start disassociating how she perceives the environment too.
Right.
Because everybody thinks that everything is very personal, but it's not. You
Mm.
can make things way more personal if you
Right.
have to do so.
Yeah. That's a wow. There's a lot of power in our environment, in our words that we don't necessarily think about, right? As we go about in our daily lives. And I'm going to take a quick break, Emilia. By the way, Dr. Emilia, but I feel like we are friends from a long time
Always
now, and
Emilia. And yes,
so
we
I
are
just call
friends.
you Emilia. But coming back from the break, I want to talk about your work and in terms of because you founded Raising Ona, which is website and a series of strategies that you use, and there's a quiz as well, and all these things, and also you mentioned that you want to foster a community of radical acceptance. So I really want to dive deep into that in the next part of the interview. Wow, time has flown by. But we'll be right back. We'll take a quick break, and so don't leave us. So we're back from the break, and before we were off the air, we just mentioned how Dr. Emilia Ferreira. I feel
No,
like
don't say that. Just say Emilia. All good.
um she was mentioning how she's so grateful to be creating this moment right now, and how we can change how parents perceive their children and themselves, even with the whole the language that we are surround ourselves with. I don't even know if I'm making sense right now. I'm thinking in Spanish and speaking in English. But I want to go back to your work in terms of founding Raising Ona. You mentioned that you want to build a community of radical acceptance among caregivers, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice, in like day to day? And what are some, actually, this is two questions. What are some common misconceptions that you find around caregiving and being a caregiver?
Um, Radical acceptance. It means that your expression of motherhood is unique independent of your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why it's hard is because you're comparing yourself with other families and you compare yourself with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I see the community as a beautiful mosaic and a puzzle in which each piece is unique and different. And that's the reason why we fit.
Mm-hmm.
The moment we start trying to experience that other part of the puzzle, that gives us distress because we don't fit anymore.
Right.
So it's just understanding that you being unique, your expression of parenthood, it's unique.
Mm.
And that is your gift. Yeah.
Okay.
We are told, stories have been told to us how we need to suffer, how we need to be angry, how we need to have grief, how we need to have that and this and that, No. Yes and no. But more no.
Yeah.
it's it's important to feel
Mm.
this pain or feel, well, that didn't go. Let me think about that, of radical acceptance, because it's so simple.
Yeah, we're constantly, I mean, I'm not a mother, but I've spoken to many mothers and they are constantly telling me how they feel, a sense of shame and a sense of guilt because they feel like they did something wrong. And then also as a caregiver, they feel like it's a burden. It's like there's just so much negative connotation to it.
Because they are comparing themselves, because they are comparing to the stories that they're being told. There's nothing to be grieved about if it's not your own feelings, it's not of your own desire, which is totally fine, to be the person you're not. But now it's time to accept our experience, who we are.
Mhm.
I am a big believer that our child are social disruptors. So you actually have a much bigger role in society than your peers that don't have a child with disability or
Right.
an impairment,
Right.
because they are going to stay on the status quo. You know, you're not going to stay in the status quo anymore because you cannot. But this resistance that the body has, of your inner body has, to always keep the status quo will make you stress.
Mm-hmm.
Our inner body, who we are not meant to, historically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
to create. We are meant, biologically speaking, historically speaking, to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of things that we're going to try to create is going to be sabotaged by our innate ability to
Mm-hmm.
survive. Meaning, you're not going to do it. Your body's going to shut you down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And say, no, now you just survive. So radical acceptance is to be aware of that and say, okay, I need to survive. My body just wants to survive. But I want an experience that is different, is unique to me. So therefore, I need to step out of that place. And what are the tools that makes me step out of that place?
Mm-hmm.
Because trust me, you're not going to change habits by talking to people and by taking supplements or by doing this and by doing that. You need to truly change how your inner body perceives the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that parents tell me, oh, it's so hard what you're saying. It is hard because you're trying to do from the outside in.
Yeah.
You need to change how your body perceives the environment. It's not a conscious work. All of this that we talk, it is explained in a conscious way, but the way we do that is in your system, it's unconsciously,
Right.
right? So how do we do that? So we use vibration. We use sound to change how your mind is, or your brain, the chemistry of your brain, the brain waves. How do you change that? How do you bring that system to a place that whenever cortisol, whenever stress is going to hit, it's not going to do like that. It's just going to rise because it's natural for that to rise, right?
It's
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. In terms of, yes, you did. In terms of what radical acceptance is, and I wanted to. You said something very, very powerful, which is that you view ONA and also children with CP and disabilities as social disruptors, and by that I can infer that you mean that they come to this life, to world, because I also have CP, we come to this world to defy our social norms of what it means to be successful and what it means to be a human being and how we should act and interact. And this is another quote I pulled from your writing that I loved, and it says, I quote, "Ability is not a straight line, it is a constellation. Neurodivergent children are like stars in an uncharted galaxy, each radiating unique brilliance that challenges our conventional maps of success."
Why? Because they, by the way, I think that you guys are here not to be successful. I think you're here to be loved and to love. I think that is my personal opinion, is the ultimate success, to experience love from everybody and love everybody. It's such a relief. It's such a, your body just accepts everything in any situation when you enter that space of I love you and you love me, right? So success implies competition. And competition means ones and zeros. And that sum is always zero. But 1 + 1 is 2. And we want to create abundance.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a game, a mind game on this that, it really changed how you experience. Mind games are so good because it really changes the chemistry of your brain. Now, we as a culture, as a earth, we have less people dying, believe it or not, out of war, out of conflict than we had in the past. I want to say that we are going towards this place of peace, even though the news are saying different. But if you look at history altogether, yes, it is. And you can only create peace when you become flexible in your experience. So people with VCP forces flexibility in us, right? Nature says this, the fittest are the ones that are more flexible. So that's going to increase actually our capacity to, now I'm going to go a little bit in the future. Now I'm going to play a little bit futuristic here. This is all that, now it's my opinion. That people with CP makes you use your frontal cortex, which is the place to create. Because if we are believing by stories, we are only staying on the part of our brain which your ego leaves, which is called the default mode network. And remember, I divide things, but they are all one. Okay. But in general, we can put those two together, and the frontal cortex is the one that's visionary, that's going to create, and the one that takes the most amount of energy to do so.
Okay.
While your default mode, which is 95% of where you stay in a day, is. A child with CP, when it comes to you, it stops. It stops everything about you. And you're like, oh, this is such a new information. How do I manage this? If the person of CP is aware, or if the person that's caring for them, together with them, usually a shadow or so forth, can say, hey, come closer, let's interact. That you basically shut down their system. And you love them. So you give them access to your frontal cortex, and you give access to the heart. The heart has neurons that are so noble that they send information to the brain and say, calm down, to the amygdala, to your primitive brain, say, calm down, right? So they are disruptors because they can make us flexible. They can make us accept our own issues, which is nothing compared to what they go through. But they make us see my experience is not so hard. And their experience, I don't know, let me find out. Oh shit, it's hard. I need to help them. But not because it's a duty, but just because now you connect. They make us accept the beauty that we can't see. Because what they make us feel is fear, number one. By the way, this is actually scientific now speaking. People without disability fear the most discriminate. Let's just put fear. Let's not use the word discrimination. Now we can talk about that if you want, but let's use the word fear. Fear to interact with people with disability compared to other marginalized groups, such as racism or sexism. Do you know why? Can you guess why?
Probably because they don't know, they just don't know how to interact, right?
Because they can become disabled.
Oh, okay. That's true.
And they are afraid.
Yeah.
So fear comes in. Remember the stories?
Right.
So
Yeah.
disability is the only minor or think that you fear you will become. So you don't want to interact because you know that could happen to you. And that's how you would like if that happened to you. You could be in a car accident, God knows, right? And then next thing you know, you're disabled.
Right.
So it's very interesting how this back chemistry play in our system without us even being aware.
Yeah, I mean, I encounter a lot of people who just don't know how to interact with me. And I've never looked at it that way in terms of because, you know, they are afraid, but it's true. It's sort of like the only group where people can fall at any moment, right? Because, you know, a car accident or whatever it may be. But I also, and here also, I'm going to add some of my opinion. I think like I'm not using them right now, but I use glasses. You use glasses. That, in a way, is a disability because without them, we can't really see, right? So whether it is through an accident or just through the natural process of aging, we all are going to become disabled, right? But it's just.
Can I add
Go ahead.
one thing?
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
very important about you guys being disruptors. You guys, and Ona, my daughter, tells me this. She's saying that she's showing society the future. And the future is artificial intelligence. The future is us accepting being cyber. So I don't see this, you see, the mindset. I don't see this as disability. I see this becoming cyber as me using technology to experience my environment better.
There you go.
Right? So I am 100% sure she's going to need to have something on her leg to make her stand. I'm working on it. I'm working with some people in technology and saying, hey, how can I create a second skin for her so she can stand for longer periods of times on her leg? I know her body wants that experience.
So there you go. You just shifted my mindset right there. You just shifted it right there. That one comment, you shifted, and it's true. You know, you use those glasses to better experience your reality and society around you. Thank you for that.
Artificial intelligence is here. The people with disability are going to be the first ones to experience that firsthand.
That's true.
They are the bridge to the future.
That is true. I think we, as again, people with disabilities, we force others to think about innovation, right? Because we have to be creative in our in our environment, which is very hostile and is not built around us.
People ask me, hey, my child is excited, they're going off, they have too much in their minds, like they have ADD, they have all these A letters.
Mm-hmm.
I say, so let me just tell you one thing about Earth, the place you're living. Do you know that the electricity around Earth, the resonance around Earth is actually increasing, right? So they are vibrating faster. That means that these children's brain are also going to vibrate faster because we are connected to that. We respond to that vibration. Okay, so when people use vibration, I'm using here in the scientific terms, which I call electricity. So we have like plug in extra signals, but not because we are doing, Earth itself is doing. You can see the environment, how it's moving, right? Especially you that you're in California, right?
Yeah.
You're in California.
Yes, San Diego.
Right? So you know, no firsthand. So I say, instead of us trying to slow down their system, because we are going to go against nature, let's figure out how can we manage them in that system and give them comfort in that system. And the same goes with disability, like my daughter has, which is physical. I am not going to be able to change her, and I do not want to do that. I want her to experience that the best way she can, and I want her to tell me via eye contact, writing, however they communicate, and give me feedback. Because we're stopping to trust our children as well. Because there's this tendency for the AAA letters that say, oh, no, they are too much. They're too much. Well, but Earth is too. So it's not going to change that.
Yeah.
What the feedback they're giving, are they okay? Right?
Yeah.
Are they fine? Or they having like, can you see they're biting, they're taking out their hair? Then it's another story. But let's just be honest too, that the way we were 50 years ago is not the way we are today anymore.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right?
Everything
A lot of parents say, oh no, we need to slow them down. Don't watch this, don't watch that. And I'm like, that's not how the brain operates. The brain's in a different electricity, in a different vibration. Now, our children, you with CP, are also in a different electricity. Why do I want to make you electric as other people? I'm just going to confuse how your system operates.
Right.
I'm going to take the best of you and say, okay, technology, help me here.
Right.
How can we give it to her what she needs to express herself?
Right.
Here.
Yeah. And you mentioned, and these will be the two final questions, Emilia, unfortunately, and we can do part 2 for sure. But you mentioned that the parents and the caregivers or the family that cares for this child, and for example, you as a mother, have the ability to change and help their children, and not necessarily try to get them to slow down, for example, but to understand them and get to their level, because our brains are wired differently, Ona and I with CP. But how can society better support caregivers such as yourself and people with brain injuries like me and like Ona, or regardless of CP, but how can as a society better support the caregivers, the parents, the partners even, and also the individuals, in your opinion?
With the parents' agency when it comes to design. Okay? The world we live today is not designed for that. It's not a problem. It is what it is. You can change that in the root of the design and without compromise.
Okay.
Meaning, I'll just give one experience with my daughter.
Mhm.
She's going to primaria. She's going to FOST. And the FOST is on first floor of a school.
Uh-huh.
And I sat down with Ona, and she told me, I am very concerned that this school is not fitted to me anymore, even though I love everything about them because the primary is on the first floor.
Yeah.
And then I say, true. She's designing. She's
In
giving
her
me the
head.
uh-huh. So I go to the director, to the board director, and I say, guys, Ona told me this.
Uh-huh.
Is concerned that the primary is going to be on the first school. They say, we are thinking about her. And I say,
Mm.
no, you don't think about her. You think how the design is here. And if design doesn't change, she cannot attend this school anymore.
Yeah.
So you need to be firm because why? She loses, and I tell parents know this. You, Ona, lose 5 times more calorie going from point A to point B than a neurotypical child.
Yeah.
What that means, if she goes up that stairs, I'm already setting her to fail
Yeah.
compared to her peers.
Yeah.
Just because she's going to be more tired. And
Mhm.
then I need to think about nutrition, which I'm a big one in nutrition, right? So, and even though I do plan her nutrition because I get it,
Mhm.
she needs that extra fuel. She's unique,
Yeah.
right? So there's no compromise. Like she cannot go up and down the stairs 5 times per day. There's
Mhm.
no elevator. What's the solution?
Change.
Disrupt the design of
Mhm.
how society interacts. No compromises. She cannot go to that school because it's on the first floor. She's not. She's not, because I'm not going to put my daughter through this.
Mhm.
No? And then guess what they say? Yes, you're right. The design here is wrong
Mhm.
because it's based on 50 years old somebody that never thought that's, like there's this
Yeah.
system or build the elevator. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. She can't. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be caring for her
Right.
if I allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
So having agency and not compromise on the design. A
Right.
lot, which I call design again, it blends with the environment as well, right? Because design is in the environment. And
Right.
then instead of letting them design, you co-design with them.
Yes. I mean, well,
Tough
there's so
because
much.
me too,
There's
because a lot of the families don't speak up and they are afraid of the result. Guess what? Many times they're gonna tell you no,
yeah.
can't fit it, can no. Then you're gonna say yes, no, yes, no. Okay, bye. Right? It's not the end of it. You just
Mhm.
need to be okay of receiving a lot of no's
Mhm.
because it's hard to change design.
Yeah.
But the design, it's another root of the problem. Why people like my daughter feel discrimination.
Absolutely. It's a societal barrier, right? So it's language first, which is the most important because society. Go ahead.
Language because it's based on previous stereotype and stigmas, and
Mhm.
our brain builds our environment only on those two elements:
Mhm.
stereotypes and stigmas.
Mhm. And then second is the environment, is the design.
Yeah.
Yeah. And both of those things in different ways are sort of ingrained in us in as soon as we are born, basically, right? Language.
Before you were born.
Before,
Any
absolutely.
of those language chemical compounds pass to you.
Yeah, that's
You
true. I
know,
mean,
it's beautiful, isn't it? Once you start understanding that this is something that we are creating, that's why, all these people say create it. And I'm like, it makes sense.
yeah.
It does make sense.
Um, Emilia, what what advice would you give to the parents listening to us out there who are struggling, who are parents and also caregivers who are struggling with their mental and emotional well-being, because there's so much, and it's at times it seems overwhelming. What advice would you give to them?
Biohacking. Biohack your biology.
Okay.
So you increase your ability to experience stress
Okay.
without creating a meltdown.
Okay.
Right. And this is kind of a topic that I know I was going to bring it up earlier. How do we biohack? But biohack increases your biology, your body way of experiencing stress.
Okay.
So certain situation when you biohack, your inner system increases its capacity to read the environment as neutral. So
Okay.
instead of trying to do through here,
Uh-huh.
biohack through here.
So
Through
for those that
your
are only listening to us and not seeing us on YouTube, can you explain? Yeah. So instead of using the brain, use
use your holistic body.
okay.
Use your hormones. Use your heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
Use your learn how your system, your inner system works, because that is going to change how you perceive the story that you are telling yourself.
Okay.
Because the story is not going to change. The stress are going to increase because the vibration of the earth is increasing. We are moving closer in terms of cultural societies in which we're going to need to be more acceptable of others. And the way to do it that is pacifist is through your body, not through your mind. The mind is based on beliefs. The body is what experiences the environment. And so you are even not going to try hard to think different. You're just going to start feeling that you're different. So, like I say, no, if you do vibration, if you do vibration is my favorite one, or if you do night hypnosis, where you change, where the brain goes into a certain state, you send information to the brain at that state, and then next thing you know, 2 weeks from now, you're like, oh, I didn't get so angry with that situation anymore. It's not about changing how your life. It's about how you perceive your life.
Through our body. And you're mentioning very deep topics, and the first thing that comes to my mind is meditation, which is something that I practice. Maybe not, but what you're mentioning and what you're talking about requires a deep connection with our bodies, requires a deep understanding of how we work. And I think, unfortunately, because of the daily grinds of life and what is being told to us in a way of we need to have things ordered, and it needs to be a checklist. And in reality, when you're a caregiver or a person with a disability, everything is chaotic and unpredictable, right? I feel like a lot of us are not able to connect with our minds and our bodies in that deep way. Is there something like for 5 minutes every day that I can do, or anyone listening can do, to be in better, to be more attuned to their feelings and their
Yes.
bodies?
Yeah. There is not a system that fits all, but there's one exercise I love and I do with me, with my husband, and with my 2 kids,
Okay.
Anna and my other son. Okay. I
Okay.
do it with everybody in the family. And just before I go there, I teach an online course on how to understand the body physiology, or
Okay.
how the body is talking to you. I would
Okay.
love to give you a discount to all your listeners
Absolutely.
whenever I launch, so they can have access to that, because it starts with the agency of educating yourself.
Oof, that's powerful. Thank you so
And
much.
that is, so on the course, we go into The silent crisis, which we talk a little bit about, is just understanding how stigma and stereotypes express itself in your body and you don't know. We call hyper independence. So then I go into the coping mechanism that you're doing and then you don't know that you're actually firing more stress in your system. Then we go to understanding what your heart do, what your stress channel does. So you can understand how that impacts how you react way before you rationalized the situation. That's why I say you need to change inside, because by the time that you rationalize, your system is off. Your system's off. And then after that, I give some strategies on how to experience time and space, because it's important to understand that the tools we have is the time and space we have. And we do a lot of things that don't matter. So I teach some of the things that actually matter in terms of agency. And then finally, we go into biohacking. And then biohacking, we divide between the elements of fire, water, and then we go into the seasons where you are, especially women. If you have your menstrual cycle, it's extremely important, or premenopause, right? Or menopause. And so to understand that, because that impacts a lot how you perceive and how you react. Okay. So today I'm going to give one biohack, which I like it a lot.
Yes, please.
It calls the feather, THATA.
Okay.
I don't know how to say that name. Theta.
No te preocupes.
So that is a brain wave that we get right before we fall asleep. Right before sleep, we go to the state in where the brain is extremely susceptible. The brain is very open to receive coding or new information, right? And that we use a vibration that continue to just massage your brain. So stress is being released through that sound, and you increase oxytocin in your system because that sound creates that state. And then another ones we have, it's with affirmations, specifically at that time of the day. It doesn't work if you put it right now. Your brain's like, whatever.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. You need to understand the cycle, the daily cycle of how your body receives and gives, right? The body is receiving, it's starting to rest. And then have affirmations. For my daughter, I use this app that calls Calm. And there's one story that I put for her. It's like, I am your fan. It's a fan.
Okay.
So I put to her every night before she goes to sleep. So it gives her information, like saying, I love, this story is amazing. For me, I get distracted with words. Okay. So I only use sound. And there's this doctor, this neuroscientist, that he wrote this book called The Proof of Heaven, something like that. And then after that, he went off to create sounds that replicate that state, this angelical state that makes your system just release all the tension. So I use that sound vibration because it has a lot of research behind that sound. Because sound is like everywhere, right? I don't agree with a lot of those sounds. I think sound is very dangerous, in fact. So I like to use sounds that have extremely amount of data, a lot of research in it, and obviously my real doctors, neuroscientists and he's a neurosurgeon. So so I use that sound as well. And I love meditation, but I'm not very good because of time. So I take my time, and then you do that right before, and I get that this, and I wake up and I'm like, oh, something's just shift. My eyes see different, And then for Anna, you can see the days that I report, she's just like, she's always searching for this, right? And it's very okay because the body and the brain is always searching for external affirmations as well. But by balancing out internal affirmation for the affirmation she's going to get or not get with the environment, you create balance.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So you use sound every single day with your partner and your children before you go to sleep as a biohack.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
20 minutes.
Okay.
20 minutes of sound, because it's the time that you are in that state is very little.
Okay.
So that state you also achieve by meditation.
Okay.
But you need to be a very pro meditator to get into that state.
Okay.
You know? And I know the parents, they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have
yeah.
willpower to manage that monkey mind that comes up every 3 seconds when you meditate. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to buy that. Oh my
Right.
medication on
The
my tooth.
thoughts.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I prefer just to give them something that is that will integrate in their biology and change them from the inside out.
Right. Well, that will create also lasting change, right? So I'm going to be your student and anyone else listening. I'm going to if you have a link, I'll add it to the show notes. And I really recommend anyone that's listening to this episode to check out some of Emilia's work. She's really amazing. And I think it's only fitting for me to end this episode with one beautiful quote that she wrote, of course. And I quote, "Love isn't just an emotion, it's a state, a biological force that, when cultivated with intention, can override the desensitization of a body that's forgotten how to feel safe. It's not the loud, fleeting kind of love, but the steady, strategic kind, the kind that rewires your nervous system, teaches your brain to trust again, and convinces your body that connection is worth the risk. Trauma may have written the first draft, but love, practiced with care and focus, has the power to rewrite the script entirely. It's not magic, it's biology, and it's within your reach." Thank you so much, Emilia Ferreira, Dr. Emilia Ferreira, for your time, for sharing a little bit about your story, a little bit of your knowledge, and for being my friend. Thank you for connecting with me. It's been my pleasure.
Yes, I think the world of you. You are an inspiration to me and my daughter. I am so glad that our path has crossed finally.
Yes, absolutely. And Ona is gorgeous, by the way. I got to see Ona and both of her children when we spoke prior to this interview, and she hopped into the interview, and I was like, "Oh my God." I said, "Hola," and she responded to me, which, by the way, Emilia has, like, her family is the United Nations. But thank you so much, Emilia. I send you a
Let me
big
just tell
hug.
you one quick hack that I do with Ona.
Uh-huh.
Vibrate her vagal nerve system.
Oh,
Because by default, she has PTSD.
okay.
This is so important because a parent asked me the other day, it's like, oh, like my child's behaving so tough and I cannot control. How can I control my child? And I'm like, all right, just so you know, on the beginning of the times of your child, first I ask how long they stay in the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
People has different story. But if they stay more than 30 days or, so my daughter stay much longer than that, they have innate PTSD. Why? Because they haven't seen the light of the day.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know day and night. Their inner system is confused. That causes stress. Okay. So I knew that was going to happen. And she also had a lot of problems. She was, close to resuscitation. So sometimes I do some exercises and I can see she getting like intense because she's going back to that experience. They have memory, right?
Yeah.
Like you remember the film? The emotional memory is always there. So usually with her, I vibrate through singing. So she sings. And then there's two things that I like about inspire them to sing. One, the internal vibration. Two, I know how she feels because she sings what she feels. So I ask her, Ona, sing me a song about your legs. Because I don't know. She doesn't know either. She's 6 years old. How she's gonna know? She's gonna turn 7 like in a month. So, but her creativity, her frontal cortex knows. So when you don't use that part of the brain that is like, oh, let me tell her a story that she's gonna like, or a story that is rational to me, which is really related about suffering, right? Because we love that story somehow. No, we are increasing her capacity to express herself. And then we are vibrating this. So we are relaxing her HPA system, her hypothalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal gland.
Okay.
By vibrating this, you let cortisol do the job that it was meant to do, which is not fire when you're not supposed to fire. Anyways, we can go that on the next one, but there's also some biohack for children as well.
That's amazing. So singing for children, that's one. And just to recap for you, something you do is sound. And you mentioned you use an app called Calm, which I do use once in a while as well.
Well, there are two different. I will send you those two because one from sound, from a vibration, is not from Calm. It's from a different website. It's
Okay.
From a different research.
Okay.
But the one I use for Anna, it's Story.
Okay.
So that one I use from Calm. I'll send you the story. I like it.
Perfect. So, yeah. Stay tuned, everyone, to the show notes of this episode. I'll add everything that Emilia sends me. I'll add it to the show notes. And if anyone has any further questions for her, send them over to me and I can forward them to her. Thank you so much, Emilia, again. It's been my pleasure. It's been a beautiful episode. Obrigado.
De nada. Muchas gracias. La próxima vez haremos esto en castellano.
Así es, lo hacemos en español y luego la próxima lo hacemos en portugués.
Total. A ver, para ti.
Practico mi portugués. Igual termina siendo portuñol, ¿eh? O sea, una combinación del español con portugués. Pero bueno. Te mando un abrazo grande, querida. Muchísimas gracias. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another episode of the Cerebral Palsy Answers podcast. And remember, if you have any questions regarding cerebral palsy in Spanish or English, please submit your question to cerebralpalsyanswers@gmail.com or head over to my website, www.azucenagarcia.com, and you can submit your question there. Thank you.